Calvin Smith. Georgia, over to you.
Thanks very much, Mark. This is Africa News, and Tunisia mourns half a dozen slain policemen, and Ennahda offices are attacked by protesters who blame the government for the victims' deaths. Also, we head to Madagascar on the eve of presidential elections. The nation's voters are banking on change for one of the poorest countries in the world. And also to Nigeria for a peek at what's heating up the catwalks for Lagos Fashion and Design Week. First up, though, Tunisia's begun 3 days of mourning for 6 policemen killed yesterday, Wednesday, by suspected jihadists. That was in the region of Sidi Bouzid. Funerals were held there in the victims' hometowns on Thursday. Another burial was in northwestern Kef, where, as public anger against the Islamist-led government spilled over again, protesters torched the offices of the Ennahda party. Several members were reportedly injured when headquarters in the town of Beja were also attacked. Meanwhile, Tunisia's political crisis drags on. National dialogue between Ennahda and the secular opposition has been put back until Friday. France 24's observers have spoken to one of the men at today's demonstration in Sidi Bouzid about why he felt the need to take to the streets.
After the rally, we decided to go to Sidi Bouzid police station and the gendarmerie barracks to make them aware of our situation and of our solidarity with them during this ordeal. We also went to the funeral of the martyr Anis Sali, one of the policemen killed yesterday, who lived in Sidi Bouzid. We are angry and sad here. We marched under the slogan "From Sidi Bouzid to Aleppo." It's the very same killer. People here hold responsible for the insecurity Ennahda and the Prime Minister Ali Larayed, who are clutching onto power even though they're no longer capable of protecting Tunisians, despite the serious political crisis in the country.
It's one of the many contributors caught up in Tunisia's political and social crisis who've spoken to our Observers team. On another news, France has denied reports that it's sending negotiators to the Sahel to try and secure the release of hostages held in the region. Currently, 6 French captives are being held there, having been abducted from Niger and Mali. While French, UN and Malian forces are currently conducting a joint operation against Islamist fighters still launching attacks in the country. Many are still hiding out in the north after the area was wrested from their control by French-led intervention earlier this year. Well, France 24's Alex Duval-Smith is in Timbuktu. She tells us more about the coordination between the different forces and what that reflects on the current security situation in the country.
This big operation that's underway called Operation Hydra is being promoted by France as a great example of a high level of coordination which has now become possible between the French forces of Operation Serval, MINUSMA, the UN force, and the Malian army. The Malian army, which has been subject to a European Union training program, which has already graduated about 1,600 soldiers, many of whom are believed to be on this operation. And of course, France wants to move towards a situation where it's increasingly hands-off in Mali. It doesn't want to get stuck into an operation creep, and it hopes that it's going to be able to hand over increasing operational capabilities to MINUSMA and the Malian army. So I think that's what this operation tells us about the military ambitions. It also tells us that it's still a very dangerous place.
So this cooperation is not in response to the recent spate of attacks that have been attributed to jihadists in northern Mali?
I think it's the latest of many operations, and certainly in its mission, which is to sweep through an area south and west of Timbuktu, but north on the northern shore of the Niger River. The nature of the operation, which is to search for arms caches and look for potential terrorists, searching houses for ammunition and guns, is very similar to what's been done in the past in other parts of the country, particularly north and east of Gao and up towards Teflit. So it's a similar operation to what we've seen before, but I think what we are seeing is that despite French and international efforts the suicide bombings are continuing. The attack on Gao last month, the suicide bombing here in Timbuktu, and constant rumours which become very clear to one just being among people in a city like Timbuktu. People are really very, very frightened.
Now, some believe it to be the poorest country in the world. Madagascar is on the eve of a presidential vote, and many hope will ease the political and economic stagnation that's dogged the country since a coup back in 2009. Poverty is everywhere to be seen, and many in its midst are sceptical that much will change after Friday's polls. France 24's correspondent sent us this report.
This is one of the poorest neighbourhoods of Madagascar's capital. Filthy, violent, desperate for schools. It's a grim reflection of the country's overall situation. Bertine has lived here for more than 15 years, and she doesn't have much faith that things will change under a new president.
I don't have much hope. We'll see what happens. Will he take care of poor people, of living conditions? I don't know.
With very little public money, local authorities can't do much. Like many here, the district mayor feels like he's been abandoned.
I'm sending a message to the next president. We want him to fix the drains in our neighbourhood, rebuild infrastructure, get rid of the rubbish, and give people jobs.
The luckiest kids make it to the classroom, but in this public primary school, there are more than 50 pupils per class, with children as young as 6 studying alongside those as old as 16. Just a few of them will go to college, fewer still to university. Teachers are hard-pressed too. Olivia and many of her colleagues haven't been paid for 5 months.
Since the beginning of the transition regime, we haven't been paid on time. I kept on teaching until now because I love my job and I want to educate the children.
People here in Antananarivo are torn between hope and resignation. They all ask the new president to put the country's economy back on track.
France 24's Jonathan Walsh there in Antananarivo. Now, the chaos in Central African Republic has seen the UN Secretary General recommend that a special guard unit be sent in to protect peacekeeping officers. African peacekeeping mission, MISCA, will also be reinforced with more troops and an aircraft. The mission may even be greenlit by the UN to use force in battling against militia terrorising the country. Lawlessness has escalated since Seleka rebels ousted President Bouzize in March. Ferdinand Gondé, the president of the Transitional National Council under the current president, Michel Djotodia, tells France 24 that Central African Republic is not a failed state.
A country cannot become a ghost state. We have an interim president, a government, an interim parliament. We have the republic's institutions that are here. We are supported by the international community. This is not a ghost government. Our administration has been shocked by recent events. We call on the international community and France to give us exceptional financial support so we can collect taxes and keep the constitutional deadline fixed by the international community so that elections are held within 18 months.
Now, Kenya police have backtracked over a summons issued for journalists who'd reported that security forces had looted and ransacked shops during the Westgate Mall massacre last month. On Thursday, 2 reporters and an executive for the KTN television station were ordered to answer questions, but just hours later, the Interior Minister cancelled the summit. The Kenyan Law Society and local media had earlier accused police of trying to interfere with press freedoms. Well, investigations continue at the wrecked Nairobi shopping centre, where at least 67 people were killed last month. Somali extremist group Al-Shabaab claimed responsibility. One of the gunmen has been identified as a Somali-born Norwegian. Norway's Somali community is worried that there's a growing problem of radicalisation amongst its young people.
Norwegian police believe that about 40 members of Norway's Somali community have recently left for war zones like Syria or Somalia.
when they are radicalized and when they are determined to go, for instance, to Syria or other conflict areas, we don't have many legal measures to stop them.
2 cases recently shocked Norwegians. First, when they heard that one of the gunmen who killed 67 people in the Nairobi Mall last month was a Norwegian born in Somalia. And then when it was reported that 2 teenage sisters from Norway's Somali community had gone to join the civil war in Syria.
Those 2 cases really affected the Somali community in Norway, and maybe it's going to be difficult to be Somalis in Norway.
Some fear that extremism is taking root in their neighborhoods.
Everyone is shocked, and you can feel when you talk with the diaspora, Somali diaspora in here, you can feel a kind of fear and the fact that they are shocked.
About 30,000 people in Norway were either born in Somalia or have Somali parents. They say they hope these 2 recent cases will not lead to a rise in racism against their community.
Well, fashionistas from across Nigeria are getting together to celebrate the glitz and glamour of their homegrown talents. The Lagos Fashion and Design Week's underway until the 26th. Its founder, Omeyemi Aklera, says that with Nigerian creativity being represented on runways around the world, fashion is big business. She hopes the industry can make an important economic contribution, particularly in reinvigorating Nigeria's textile industry. Some pretty good ideas for fashion tips there. That does wrap up African News for me, though, Mark. I will be back with more tomorrow.
Georgia Carmen-Smith, thank you very much indeed. Georgia there with all the African news. We're taking a short break after that. It's another World News Update. We've got sport, looking at the, no doubt, the French football strike. And in focus, people power of a different kind. Stay with us.